Welcome back, explorers. I'm David, that's Wesley, and this is the Trailcast.
The weekly show that gets so far off track, you'll have to stick around to see just where we end up.
Hello there.
General Kenobi. Did you know that today we're talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith?
Well, as awkward as the intro was, that's right, today we're talking about Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
And, okay, I just have to say, I had forgotten just how good this movie was. Like, there's so much, like we were talking about when we were talking about Phantom Menace, like the manipulation behind the scenes that you see Palpatine doing. It's like even more so in this. And it's like, it's beautiful. Honestly.
I did rewatch it, but I was kind of only half paying attention, so I probably should have been paying more attention to it because, you know, we're kind of dissecting it, but
Don't worry, I got plenty to say.
But yeah, I did notice that like, it's very yeah, Palpatine is very manipulative.
Now, I do want to mention this. You know how we were talking about last time with episode 2? How you mentioned that Obi-Wan never beat Dooku in a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how I mentioned that there's fan speculation that possibly Palpatine was kind of manipulating things with the Force, when him and Anakin and Dooku fight on the ship there. Well, I watched it, and both times that Dooku got the best of Obi-Wan in this specific fight, the camera cut to Palpatine, then cut back to Obi-Wan, you know, Dooku got the best of him. Then they go back to fighting, and then it cuts back. It only does it twice, but then it cuts back to them, cuts to Palpatine, and then Dooku starts choking him and throws him off to the side. So, I'm not saying that it's actually what they were planning on doing. I'm just saying that it has a very valid case.
Yeah, I did notice that, at least with the one scene where, Dooku force chokes Obi-Wan and throws him. I did notice that it kind of cut to, Palpatine there, and Palpatine was, really, into the fight.
Yeah. Which, I'm not saying, I don't want to discount anything from Dooku. Dooku is an amazing Force user, and an even more amazing duelist. But, Obi-Wan is probably within the top, 3 or 4 Jedi at this time. Within power and, he's on the council for a reason, and he's pretty powerful. So, and Dooku is nowhere near the power of Sidious. And, so he's not doing, Sidious level things where, later on when Mace Windu goes in to confront him, he cuts down 3 Jedi Masters within a couple seconds. Dooku's not on that level. So, there seems like there might be a little bit more to the fight than just Dooku being that good.
Now, I will say, in the past couple of these we've done, we've spent some time talking about the duels at the end of each movie. But I was just trying to count it up in my head or just now. There are 5 duels in this movie, if you count the two at the end, the Obi-Wan Anakin, the Yoda Palpatine. Then there was, of course, the first one with Dooku. There was the one where they confront Palpatine, Mace Windu and the other Jedi confront Palpatine, and then there was also the Obi-Wan Grievous duel.
Yeah.
That's all of them, right?
Yes, I was thinking when you said 5, I was like, I don't remember 5, but then you mentioned I was forgetting the Mace Windu and Palpatine one.
It was quick, but yeah, that technically is a duel, but it was quick.
Well, it wasn't that quick. It was just that they didn't focus on it that much, like a lot happened, but a lot wasn't shown.
Well, like
it was
only
quick
ones
relative to the other ones.
Well, the only ones that really weren't quick were the two at the end.
Yeah, those.
Because those took a main. Can I speak English? Those took a main focus. And as we mentioned before, that one was, or the Obi-Wan Anakin duel is probably one of the. It is definitely the most visually impressive duel in all of Star Wars.
But let's get back to the beginning of the movie and work our way through.
Yeah. So, let's start off with the.
Okay, so I want to say this one thing among other things that I'm going to say, but so let's think about this fact. And I was thinking about this when I was for anyone who can hear, my dog is whining in the background, so ignore him. Hopefully he doesn't start barking soon. But anyways, what I was thinking of while watching the movie was, so the ship that Grievous is on has Palpatine, and that's like supposedly a known fact. Like the Obi-Wan and Anakin go to that ship to find Palpatine, so that's where he is. And I know there's a space battle going on, but why are they firing on that ship?
Yeah, I did think about that too. That
You're gonna blow up the Chancellor! I mean, it wouldn't have been a bad thing if they did, but it would have been a bad thing if they did,
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, you don't fire upon a ship that has hostages on it.
Yeah. Especially even like they sent in Obi-Wan and Anakin to rescue the Chancellor. So like, don't fire on it. I mean, the ship does crash, and it's like, what were you thinking?
Another happy landing.
Yeah. Now, let's think about this though, and I'm pretty sure you and me both have watched enough Clone Wars to know that Clone Wars did a good job at making sure Anakin and Grievous never met, if I'm remembering right. Because in this is the first time that they had ever crossed paths, which I think there's a couple episodes. The only time. There's a couple episodes I remember that they were like in the same vicinity, and yeah, I think that's the right way. I don't know how to English. Anyways, people know what I'm talking about. They're in the same, like, maybe the same ship or something, but they just never ended up crossing. I think there might have been, like, if I can remember one, I think there's one with, like, Obi-Wan and Anakin where, like, Obi-Wan ends up confronting Grievous. And
there were several times.
Anakin somewhere else on the ship.
There were several times across Clone Wars where Obi-Wan fought Grievous. And if I remember correctly, there were also a few times where Ahsoka fought Grievous.
Yeah. But Anakin never came across him.
Which also just goes to show the how much attention to detail Dave Filoni put into that show.
The fact that he deserves to run Lucasfilm.
Yes. Yes, like we mentioned, I mentioned last time when we were talking about Attack of the Clones. Since George Lucas is no longer involved with Star Wars, Dave Filoni, to me, is the ultimate authority on Star Wars.
Yes,
That's,
hands down,
yeah.
hands down. But I will say it is an interesting thing. Like last time we talked about when we talked about episode two, I wanted to say last week, but it wasn't last week. When we talked about
Last
episode
month.
two, last month, when we talked about episode two, you mentioned how short of a time Dooku was around. They do the exact same thing with General Grievous, with how he's in the first part of the movie, and you know, he dies. I think it's no more than like an hour into the movie. I think it's about an hour, maybe over the hour 10, 15 mark. Like it's not that far. It's about halfway through the movie. He ends up getting killed. You know, which goes to show, like we were saying a minute ago, just how long that end portion of the movie is. Like it's about half the movie that
Mm-hmm.
they're really going into the deconstruction of Anakin and
Well,
you know
because also when you think
Palpatine's
about
plan.
like that whole thing with when Obi-Wan tracks down Grievous, he's on Utapau, and he's on Utapau when Order 66 hits.
Yeah.
So
He goes to Utapau, and I was like, I don't remember why, but I specifically looked at it, and this was literally like that's just about an hour into the movie. So and at that point, that's when he leaves for Utapau is when him and Anakin say their last goodbyes as friends, and it is kind of a solemn thing of like I was telling Sarah when we were watching the movie and the first scene when they're on the ship, just the dynamic that him and Anakin have, Obi-Wan and Anakin have, like it just works. It's really good, and I think both actors did a really good job in the whole movie, but specifically with how they played up like their relationship.
I
And
think it.
it's nothing like episode two. Like this is the Anakin and Obi-Wan everyone knows, and
Well,
like this is
because
the brother mentality.
well, I think we'd gotten this like this kind of chemistry between them throughout all Attack of the Clones. That movie would have been much better. But really, the only corny dialogue in this movie is towards the end. Some of the dialogue on Mustafar is not the greatest, but
It's
it's
overshadowed by the fight.
yeah, yeah. Um,
I will say though, but you think about it, because you didn't get the type of okay, if the bond between Obi-Wan and Anakin is like throughout episode three, that end when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting and then then he gets cut up and he's down on the bottom of the hill and Obi-Wan's talking to him, that would be nowhere near as emotional if they didn't have a good bond throughout the movie. And within about an hour, maybe a little bit more, they fix everything that they did in episode two with the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and they really make you feel just like how sad it is on like specifically Obi-Wan's part of having to fight Anakin and fight this man that he's trained since he was a young kid, and someone he considers to be a brother, a friend, like you really feel the emotion. And if the dynamic they had was the same that they had in episode two, you wouldn't feel any of that.
And this is actually the first time I've watched. This is kind of another side note, but this is the first time I've watched Revenge of the Sith since Kenobi came out. And now I do have more problems with Kenobi, which we can get into another time. But the one thing I think Kenobi did well was actually just showing like when you view this movie and then look at Kenobi or look at Obi-Wan in that show. Yeah, he would have PTSD, and I think they did a good job, like, kind of expressing that. Like, this would have been a very traumatic thing for any one of these characters who went through it.
Yes. Now, I do want to jump back to the beginning of the movie, as we kind of work our way through this. Um, so let's talk about Padme and the little surprises she has for Anakin when he gets back.
Okay, well, what specifically do you want to talk about?
Well, obviously, I'm not trying to mess with Star Wars canon, but I am at the same time, because there is no way those are his kids. Just no way. She's a senator. She has to do what she has to do. No, but like if you think about it, even like in the dialogue of the movie, I mean, there might be other things that like I'm not remembering that they might have talked about from the Clone Wars or this or that. The other thing, I don't really care, because even in it, they were talking about how like it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Now, obviously, like he could have been back within the year. It only takes 9 months, so if you give it about 10 months ago, he was back. Sure, whatever. But Luke and Leia, who's the father?
Well, I mean, Luke inherited all of Anakin's like ability to fly and all this, So I don't know.
Yeah, well, he could have.
Force ability.
Well, see, that's why my theory is that he was born by the Force. So he's like another Anakin. No, I know that's not how the story's supposed to play out, but if you do think about it, like, think about just how, even in the Clone Wars, like, I guess they were back on Coruscant a decent amount, but like, how much time they were on other worlds, like, they were there for a long time, and the war were just the war just kept going on. They weren't going to stop for anyone to go have family time or take time off. And Anakin and Obi-Wan were, two of the most important Jedi out there. They grew a name for themselves. So it's just one of those thoughts. It's one of those intrusive thoughts you have to let play out.
Mm-hmm. You seem to have a lot of those.
That's all that I have.
All you have are intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, I hope that no one... I don't really know what to say, but I hope that certain people don't listen to this. Ever. The podcast, not this episode. But,
well, on that note, let's go ahead and just move on.
I mean, I'm right. I know I'm right. But anyway, we can move on to what happens next.
What does happen next?
Well,
I mean, I know it happens later on in the movie, but
anyways, so I don't remember this specifically happens next, but I know that this won't really mentioning this won't really throw too much off. I found it interesting that it's literally just like almost a throwaway scene. Oh my, where like they show General Grievous getting to Utapau. And then he goes and has a meeting or conversation or whatever with the Emperor, with Palpatine or Sidious, I guess at this point. And in this little conversation, Sidious says, "Yeah, well, Dooku was collateral damage. Like he basically like I'd already planned all this out. It was his time. I was done using him." But the important thing is get all the separatist leaders to Mustafar, and they'll be safe there. Which sets up at the end of the movie where he ends up killing him, which I find interesting because, there's just like a small little tiny detail that is pretty throwaway, but like is kind of important because when Palpatine sends Anakin to kill all the leaders at on Mustafar, um, that ends the war because even though the Jedi, he had taken care of like the clones turning on the Jedi, Anakin turned to the dark side, Mace Windu was dead, and he was out as a Sith Lord. Like the Republic was still intact at that moment in time. So the Republic was still at war with the Separatists. But with General Grievous dead, the only other members to get rid of to end the war would be the Separatist leaders, which he moves, and then has Anakin go kill, which he can claim credit for, saying, hey, I've brought peace to this galaxy, which, like, that's a thought I have with, like, how crazy good he is at, like, this whole manipulation and master planning. Also, we can dive into this maybe a little bit later, or we can do it now. I don't really care. But can we talk about how just like for all intents and purposes, the Jedi did commit treason.
Yeah.
Because being a Sith was not illegal, and they attacked the Chancellor. Now, yes, the Chancellor had done bad things, but they probably couldn't prove it if they took him to court, which is, one of the things that Swindu was talking about, like the Senate, but they also didn't have any evidence that he was doing anything wrong. And being a Sith Lord was not a crime. So, like, he manipulated all those situations where, like, to the public, he looked like the good guy. He looked like the victim.
And yeah, I mean, he well, that's just good back to thing. Like he was a master manipulator. Like, this whole war was just to basically all of this the entire prequel trilogy was about basically Palpatine discrediting the Jedi and getting them out of the Republic and getting the Senate behind his back, like just thoroughly behind his back. That's what it was all about. Because, like, the Separatists were never supposed to win. That wasn't the point of it, And which also, you think about, like, even the quote unquote bad guys in this in all this still weren't, or still didn't know what the plan was. Dooku and Grievous and Maul were all just pawns that Palpatine used.
Yeah, they were just following orders for most of it. I mean, if you talk about Clone Wars, like, Maul wasn't necessarily following orders, but, like, he still was a pawn in the game.
But, like, Dooku was, actually, like we talked about last time, he was actually originally trying to help the like,
he went about it the wrong way, but
like originally his motives were good, but and Palpatine used it, like, I'll bet you Palpatine never told him what his actual plan was, because he didn't need to, because Palpatine wasn't, because Dooku wasn't going to be around.
Yeah, but it's like I thought, Episode 1 showed Palpatine very well. Like, honestly, looking back, like, that movie was very well written. You got Jar Jar, but it was very well written. Episode 2, I did not feel the same way. They really leaned heavily into the romantic relationship between Padme and Anakin, which the scene in Episode 3 where they're, like, sitting there and talking, they're already married at this point, so it's not really creepy. But that actually worked. Like, I thought the chemistry that they showed between they were showing between Anakin and Padme like actually worked in that one scene. But, like, they screwed it up horribly throughout all of Episode 2. So they didn't really focus much on Palpatine in Episode 2. And then in Episode 3, obviously they had to focus on Palpatine because of all the events happening. And I think, this was even better written than episode 1. Just how every little thing just fell into place, you know?
Mm. And like going through like so out between Obi-Wan going to Utapau and like when they actually rescue the Chancellor, that's a lot of like the politics scenes. But
Yeah.
just we get a lot of the conversations between Anakin and Palpatine, and like Palpatine's basically earned Anakin's trust at this point. Like even when the Council asks Anakin to spy on Palpatine, he's like he doesn't want to because he trusts Palpatine. I will say,
like the way that they wrote it and they shot it and like laid out the movie was really good because they had that scene where Anakin wakes up from a dream where Padme's dying. They have all that, and like no more than a scene or two later, what's he doing? He's talking to Palpatine about a Sith Lord, a story of a Sith Lord who could save others from dying. Like Palpatine knew what I don't know if it was a thing where Palpatine was, pushing these dreams on him, or he just knew what he was dreaming about. I don't know all, what the lore says or what actually. I haven't looked that much into it, but Palpatine knows what's going on, and he's just this is just completely random. But have you ever heard of a story about this guy? Yeah, he was a Sith Lord that could save other people from death. Like, wow. Just, random to seemingly random, but it all lines up. And then, you come down to the fight with Mace Windu and Palpatine, and he's like, I can't let Palpatine die here. Because if he does, then the all hope of saving Padme's gone. So what does he do? He ends up helping Palpatine kill Mace Windu. And then what's he supposed to do? Well, he can't really do much. He's, as far as the Jedi Council goes, he's committed treason against the Jedi. So he's no longer with them. So why not stick with the guy who might be able to save Padme? Like it all, like Anakin really, if you really look at it, is a really sympathetic character. Like, Anakin's in a situation where it's like, honestly, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing. Like, being in his exact situation, know exactly what he knows, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same.
Well, it's like George Lucas in an interview one time was even talking about Darth Vader, and he's like, if you watch the whole all 6 movies, you realize just how, like, in the original trilogy, he kind of portrays himself as the Dark Lord of the Sith, but like, he's really a very sad character because like, it just kind of like all this just kind of happened to it, and it's like one thing we talk about when we're talking about the Phantom Menace. Like, you look at him, like, he went from being in literal slavery to being in a the Jedi Order really was like, it really was kind of very cult like, very
the Jedi cult,
and then basically being a slave again to the Emperor. Like it
really is a sad story. Well, wasn't it one thing where like George Lucas mentioned how he like took inspiration from like a bunch of the different tragedies, like the story of Star Wars is like is a tragedy, like, at the end of episode 6 everyone's happy. There's a lot more to it than that.
Well, and that's another thing too with Revenge of the Sith. this is one of few movies where the villain wins. Like,
I think there's a reason that, personally, I like episode 3 and episode 5 the best. I just don't like happy endings, apparently.
but this one is one that very much so. Like, I mean, again, we know what happens. It's a I think it's a prequel, so that's kind of the point. But still, it's a very much so Palpatine won. And it's kind of, you don't often see that in a lot of cinema.
And I think that's what makes it so good, though, too, is the fact, like, and that's another reason I think why episode 5 is so good, is because the villain winning, that doesn't happen. No, at the end of the movie, the hero is supposed to win. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think, like, well, not why do you think, but it's like one of those things where, like, why did Infinity War do so good? Well, it was a build-up, and it was not something we had ever seen before, and it's a story that's not often told, where the heroes don't come out on top, you know? Like, obviously Infinity War, there's much more to it than just that the villain won is why it was good. But that was an aspect where it's like we don't see this all the time. You know, the heroes are supposed to win, and a lot of times they do. But I think one good thing about Infinity War, and even like at the end of Endgame, like what made Endgame so good, they won in the end, right? Yes, but at a very, very extreme cost.
And yeah, it's just, and like you can look at it, like, technically, if you look at it, like, it's almost really weird because the Republic became the Empire. It's like even like the side you were rooting for technically actually won, but
Yeah,
not,
didn't work
not,
how
yeah.
you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Also-
hard because, like, with that in mind, like we talked about with episode 1, the guy in charge of both sides essentially was the same guy. So there's only one person's going to win in that scenario, and that's the guy playing everyone.
Also, I know we talked about this when we did I can't remember if it was when we did the Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, but I know we did talk about this before, but just how dogmatic and arrogant Mace Windu is.
Oh yes, oh boy. So,
And like,
go ahead.
I know we talked about that before, because we were, seemed like this whole, with both past ones we did, we couldn't stay away from talking about Revenge of the Sith, but like that ultimately is what led to him dying. That
Yeah.
his and like I think part of his mistrust of Anakin is the fact that Anakin is the chosen one.
A lot of jealousy with that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of his mistrust of Anakin. Is like, why is he the chosen one?
Yeah. Well, also, like, a lot of people believe that, like, the power set that Mace Windu had, and understand how I'm saying this, but, like, he could have been the chosen one, quote unquote. Like, a lot of things pointed to that, even though he wasn't, I think, from, like, what I've seen. So that was one thing, too, is, like, he's over here like, hey, look how powerful I am. What makes him so special?
And especially Mace Windu, like, Mace Windu was a very powerful Jedi. You can't take, because he was a Jedi Council member, he
Hey,
was
you don't become the deputy grand master for by doing nothing.
again, yeah, he was a deputy grandmaster, and he's also a lot younger than most of the Jedi Council members.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I know he's not young, but he was a lot younger than most of the Jedi Council
Younger,
members.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's what I mean. Like, like being that high a position at, like, you don't get that without being a very powerful Jedi. But he just was so clouded with his arrogance and dogma and stuff that he just, he was
Now,
what the Jedi Order had become.
yes. Now let's talk about this. He did technically bring balance to the Force because theory time. I think 2 times Mace Windu had a huge effect on the outcome of Revenge of the Sith, which caused everything else to happen, and technically, I guess, balance the Force. But, anyways, he was probably a huge part of Anakin not becoming a master. Which, if Anakin became a master, I don't think that he would have gone to. I think that would have helped with his distrust in the council.
Mm.
And obviously he would have had access to things that would help him with Padme. 2, he told Anakin to wait in the Jedi Council chambers when they went to fight Palpatine. That would have definitely been a different outcome if Anakin was there with Mace Windu and the other Jedis. Like,
because
he probably wouldn't have turned.
Well, I also honestly don't know how much of an offensive Palpatine would have taken, because he took a very offensive position when they confronted him, because he killed who was it? Kit Fisto. What were all the Jedi there?
Kit Fisto. Sacy 10.
Season 10, yeah.
Right, but yeah. And I literally was looking at this last night. And Agent Core.
Agent Clore. Yeah, Agent Clore. Yeah, but he kills Kit Fisto, Season 10, and Agent Clore like instantly.
Yeah. Apparently, I've never read it, but in the novelization, it talks about how much of a blur he was to them. Like, you watch the movie and you're like, wow, they're not that great. But it's like, no, they were really, really powerful Jedi. He's just that much better. Which is another reason why I don't think that Mace Windu beat him. Because it wouldn't have made any sense for Mace Windu. Well, it wouldn't have made any sense for Palpatine to win the fight. It makes more sense for him to lose the fight, have Anakin find that, have Anakin make the decision.
Well, because I think Palpatine knew Anakin was there.
Oh yeah,
Palpatine knew Anakin was on his way there.
I can guarantee you that Palpatine knew exactly what was going on in Anakin's head. So, I know apparently George Lucas says that Mace Windu won the fight outright, but I don't know. I personally, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. Personally, I just don't know if I can agree with George Lucas on that. It just doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I think Palpatine threw the fight because he knew, he knew Anakin was about to walk in.
And I hear also that people talk about, well, Mace Windu was very powerful and he used what was the name of his fighting style that he made? It was a Form 7 fighting style. You know what I'm talking about? What's the name of it? Well, keep thinking about that while I'm talking. But anyways, they're talking about that where it's like the way the fighting style works is he uses because he's kind of on that cusp of the dark side, somehow or another he can use someone else's like basically whatever dark side energy that someone is forcing on him or something like that. He can force it and repel it back on them, something along those lines. Like basically, he's not sitting there using up his own energy. He's using their energy against them. Something along those lines. For any Star Wars fan listening to this, I'm sorry I'm butchering this. I should have done better research before I came into this podcast. Shows the low prep that we do. But anyways, I understand like the stuff with Mace Windu's fighting style better than I am saying right now, but I still don't think that he would be able to out. I don't think he'd be able to best Palpatine. Like I just don't think if Yoda couldn't, I just don't think Mace Windu could either.
Yeah, it's apparently called it's Form 7, or it's a modified version of Form 7 called Vapad.
Oh, Vapod.
Vapod. Yeah, it's V double A PAD. Vapad.
I'm gonna go back to what we were talking about last week with Joel Schumacher, and say that I've heard Vapod on the internet. So either the internet is wrong or I don't care.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I'm gonna say this right now. I am a huge Star Wars nerd, but the lightsaber forms are even a little bit too much for me. Like,
oh, speaking of which, I specifically did this research. I pulled up a thing for the Anakin and Obi-Wan fight, and I have some stuff with that.
Mm-hmm. Like, if I actually knew sword combat, which I would like to, like actual sword combat, I would probably be better at like, because I've seen some people who can like look at duels and stuff in Star Wars and immediately, without even researching it, know what form they're using and stuff. It's like I can't do that. But like I said, I would like to get into like learning medieval combat, which I know a little bit of, but I don't have really the ability to like practice it, so I don't know.
Hey David, we need to start sword fighting.
I would love to learn how to like get a broadsword, like medieval combat.
Let's start practicing. We'll go do some sessions, like 2 sessions a night or something. 2 sessions a night? What? I'm in
what?
Maybe a session a month. Go and like learn how to fight.
Oh, I would love to learn sword fighting. Anyway,
when's your birthday?
My birthday is...
Yeah, nobody cares.
Well...
Yes, I know your birthday, David. Of course I know your birthday.
It's like
it's
later
the day
this
you were
week
born.
Or something. Yeah, it's later this week or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's I didn't even realize what today is. So it's let's see. As of recording this, we're recording this the Tuesday before this comes out, which come out on Monday. But it will be, what's today? Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's Thursday.
Something like that, yeah.
29th, right? Well, happy early birthday, David! And by the time this comes out, late birthday, David!
Yeah, you're lucky. We got one that's coming out on your birthday.
Oh yeah, true. Dang, you're gonna be old! Not because of your age, just because you're older than me.
Well, hey, we'll be the same age in 7 weeks, so, you know.
I didn't really think about the fact that, like, my birthday seems like something that's so far off, but it's not, and that's kind of weird. Because, like, yeah, your birthday's in 2 days. So, that means, yeah, 7 weeks from now, I'm gonna have my birthday. And it's like, I've like, in my mind, like, Sarah or, my sister's mom will talk about my birthday. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, that thing that's, way down the road. But it's not anymore. So, that's interesting. Good to know. I don't keep up with the date much.
I only do because I see it when when I do stuff for the podcast.
That's fair.
I know what day the podcast or what dates the podcast come up on normally.
I'm just lucky to know what day of the week it is.
Well, I mean, you work 6 days a week, so I mean, it all kind of probably runs together.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah.
6 days a week and never get off on Sundays. So, well, I get off on Sundays, but I'm never free on Sundays. So everything's just chaotic. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, let's see.
Let's get back into Revenge of the Sith. So, what were we talking about? We were talking about the Palpatine duel, that duel.
Yeah.
Which we also skipped over the Grievous duel, so you want to jump back to that real quick?
We probably should jump back to that. I was trying to play out the movie in my head and figure out where a good place to pick up after that. But yeah, let's go back to the Grievous duel, because that is kind of important. And it does lead some other things. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Grievous duel? What would you like to talk about with that?
After all that, he kills him with a blaster.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've never, it's one thing I've never really liked, because, I don't know. Just seemed kind of weird.
It definitely is over too fast.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll get to the better duels. The two really good duels later on, but yeah, it was really, really quick especially just the lightsaber combat part, because it was, before you know it, Obi-Wan has lost his lightsaber, and Grievous is running away on the scooter thing.
Now, actually, I will say the lightsaber part of it is really good, and I think that really shows just how good of a duelist Obi-Wan is.
Oh yes, yeah, because
we were talking to I guess it was last time, because we can't seem to stop talking about Revenge of the Sith, but we were talking about Grievous and talking about how you really like the depiction in the 2D animated Clone Wars, and just how horror-esque he is. Mm-hmm. Well, in that, he takes on how many Jedi? It's 4, and 2 of them are masters. Mundi and Shakti, I believe. And he kills the rest of them. It's maybe 4 or 5, and then he really leaves the other 2 in bad shape. And he's killed a lot of Jedi. So Obi-Wan takes him on by himself, and within a couple seconds has gotten down to 2 lightsabers. That's pretty impressive.
Mm. And like what I mentioned last time, when we were talking about the Dooku Geonosis duel, that Anakin was dual wielding, and Dooku disarmed him very easily.
Yeah.
And then literally disarmed him. But the dual wielding is very overwhelming for a non-experienced combatant, and you add 2 extra lightsabers in that are spinning around like fan blades, that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you can even look at Obi-Wan, he kind of stepped back a little bit and just kind of analyzed Grievous's form, and then very easily took him out. And part of that is great, the fact that Grievous is not force sensitive, so he's not as he's not as doesn't have as much practice as a Jedi would, and two, like I said, he's not force sensitive, so he's not attuned to the like. Because a lightsaber is supposed to be like a kyber crystal is supposed to be force sensitive too, so it's supposed to be like the kind of like the Harry Potter thing of like the crystal chooses the Jedi, the wand chooses the wizard, crystal chooses the Jedi, so like the Jedi is supposed to be very like
one with his lightsaber.
Yeah, essentially, and so you do lose some part of that, which is I think why it is very easy for Obi-Wan to disarm him, but still, like, that still takes a lot of skill to be able to assess that situation and actually do it,
And as much as like you were saying, like, he ends up killing him with a blaster, and the fight just seems like it's over so quick. All those things. The fight doesn't seem misplaced. Like, it plays out honestly how you would expect it to, because of how Grievous has been shown up until this point. Like, he's a coward. He confronted Obi-Wan because he was like, I can take him. Yeah, why not? Gets two of his arms cut off, and then gets forced back and loses all his lightsabers. Oof, maybe not. Now I need to retreat. And, Obi-Wan pursues him and loses his lightsaber in the process. Neither one have lightsabers. Now they're just, hand-to-hand combat. Obviously, Grievous would win that. He finds a blaster, shoots him. It makes sense, even though it's like, man, I would have loved to see more lightsaber, back and forth, and maybe that be the way that Grievous is killed. But, it does fit.
And I do kind of wish, I kind of thought of this, like, it's got kind of the same, thing of like in Thor: Love and Thunder, how we see Gore the God Butcher, who we don't actually see really killing any gods. It's like Grievous is supposed to be a Jedi hunter, and in the movie, yes, we see in the 2D animated Clone Wars we see him kill Jedi, but in the movies we don't actually see him kill any Jedi.
Yeah, he just fights one and dies immediately. That's the only fight live action that we have with Grievous, and he dies in it. He loses.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's like
I will say that character's a lot like Maul, where it's like you had a really good character and you killed him off with very little screen time.
I mean, they kind of had to because they introduced him in the last movie, but yeah.
I will say though, I am glad that these characters were introduced, Maul, Dooku, and Grievous, because think about all the content that we would not have from the Clone Wars if they were not, they were not created. But now we have them, and those shows are great for it.
I think all three of those characters do better or have much more time to shine in the Clone Wars. Like they're much more fleshed out characters.
Mm-hmm. And that is the thing. It is hard to do a lot of fleshing out. Like you were saying, have him be a Jedi killer. It's hard to do that with the pacing of the movie and what you're focusing on with the movie. Like, it is hard. But, I think that's part of like what the Clone Wars are there for. Like, they're there to flesh out characters more and, introduce new characters and show you things that characters do and all. Like, that's what it's all there for,
Mm-hmm.
And we love it for it. The Clone Wars are amazing.
I'm talking about clones. Order 66. That's one scene, like,
man.
Especially after I didn't have time to watch the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars. I wanted to, but like that, you get so much more. Like, if you watched Clone Wars up until this point, and then watched Revenge of the Sith, like, that's, man, like, knowing what you know about from Clone Wars with the inhibitor chips and all that, It's like honestly, another thing is like really sad when you think about it.
And I think we've talked about this before. The bond that the Jedi and the clones had, like you see that so much more in Clone Wars, and then like Palpatine made the perfect army to kill the Jedi because they would never see that coming. Like the only one that they show besides Yoda, who survives Order 66, the only Jedi that they show who actually is aware of it beforehand and barely, holds his own for a second is Coyote and like he dies still pretty quickly, but it's like he was he was on the Jedi Council. He was a very very powerful Jedi,
and that's one thing that and that's one thing I like that they did in Clone Wars, because originally they're kind of like loose canon. They're kind of because like they didn't really spell it out in the movie or anything, but kind of like the way it was portrayed was that the clones knew, like even before the clones knew, and like I feel like if you did it that way, one of the Jedi would have sensed it in the clones.
Yeah, that's
they
too
would
hard
have
to keep a secret.
the Jedi would have found out about it, but the inhibitor chip is such a perfect, well, in all reality, such a perfect explanation and plot device. But like in universe, it's such a perfect plan for Palpatine because like I said, none of the Jedi sensed it because none of the Jedi could have. None of the clones knew. So, well, okay. If we talk about Clone Wars, I'll talk about more of that. Most of the clones didn't know, but,
That is one thing that we need to talk about, is we're going through the movies right now. At what point are we going to go through we're going through the main line movies, so all the ones that have numbers next to them. But that doesn't include, Solo, Rogue One, or any of the TV shows. So we might need to come back to some of this stuff after the fact and talk about them because, I mean, they're good. They're good stuff. And I'm kind of sad that we aren't going to be talking about Rogue One because then I don't have an excuse to watch it. And if I don't have an excuse to watch something, half the time I don't watch it. So just don't have the time.
Yeah. I mean, we do need to go back and talk about some of these stuff later, like the shows and all that. But
now, talking about executing Order 66, this is done right after Anakin has helped Palpatine kill Mace Windu.
Correct.
And he has sent Anakin to the Jedi Temple to wipe out the rest of the Jedi. Which after that leads him into go into Mustafar. So I feel like now we can probably jump over to the Mustafar fight if we want to, because there's probably a lot to dive into with that, and then also bouncing between that and the Yoda Palpatine fight.
Which you said you had some thoughts on the Mustafar duel, so why don't you go ahead and just start you dive into some of your thoughts here.
I will say there were I missed them. I've seen the scenes before, but I missed them this time around. What I'm talking about is in the fight, there are a couple of times where Anakin uses moves on Obi-Wan that he is like. There's one specific move at one point that he uses where he tries to do what he did to Dooku to Obi-Wan, and obviously Obi-Wan deflects it. He doesn't get both his hands chopped off. But I would say it is cool, like looking at the fight um, just how evenly matched they are. Like, yes, the whole entire time Anakin's on the offensive and Obi-Wan's on the defensive. But like, they specifically show it when they're, they're doing the forced push. There's no give. Neither one of them can force the other one away because they're just so evenly matched at this point in time. And obviously Anakin or Obi-Wan is coming at from the angle of, he has to do what he has to do, but he's fighting his brother, and Anakin's over here like, I hate you, like I. There are things that probably could have been done better on Obi-Wan's part as far as talking with Anakin, but for all intents and purposes, Anakin was not going to listen to anything. So, like, the fight was going to happen.
Well, I think, Obi-Wan knew about it, because, like, notice, like, Obi-Wan let Padme go out first. Because Padme was the one who was going to be able to reason with him.
Yeah.
And, when that was kind of obvious that...
Go ahead.
And, when that was kind of obvious that wasn't going to happen, that's when he came out of the ship.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Obi-Wan stowing away? Like, do you think that if he hadn't done that and let Padme go to Anakin without him being around, do you think that he would have there would have been that would have been a positive outcome? Because I will say, I think it was in the novelization or whatever. There's somewhere out there that I've heard, and it's supposed to be canonized, that Anakin really did think about leaving with Padme and going to Naboo. Like, he seriously considered it. And then, then when he saw Obi-Wan, his rage came back, and, that was just not going to happen. So, do you think that there was a chance that Padme would have been able to reason with him if Obi-Wan had not come?
So there are a couple possibilities in my mind with what this would have happened. Like, so let's say that happened, and Anakin did go with Padme to Naboo. Either one, Palpatine would have tracked them down and killed Padme.
Mm-hmm.
Or Anakin would have stayed, because I don't know if Anakin would have necessarily been able to be redeemed at that point. I don't know. And I don't know if Anakin, and I feel like Anakin having training Luke and Leia might not have been the best thing either.
Yeah.
So I feel like short term, I feel like it could have been a good outcome, but long term, I feel like it would have ended up not being the best outcome. But like I said, I feel like if that did happen, and they did, Anakin and Padme did end up going to Naboo, Palpatine would track them down and killed Padme.
Well, do you think, like, what would have been his play at that point? Because, like, he could have killed Padme, but Anakin turned to the dark side and stuck with Palpatine because Padme died. Well, not necessarily, but, like, it was more, the reason he didn't just go full rage on Palpatine was because, like, he didn't know Palpatine was the reason Padme died. He thought it was him. He thought it was, other reasons. So if Palpatine straight up killed Padme, do you think that would have actually been, like, either one or two things would have had to happen? And I don't think that Anakin was at the point in time that he would have been able to beat Palpatine. But let's say that it took a couple years and they, like, bounced around and moved. Let's say it took a couple years before Palpatine found Anakin, and Anakin had been training this whole time. And then they confronted each other. Like, one or two things going to happen. Either Anakin's going to have to die, or Palpatine's going to have to die if Palpatine's trying to kill Padme. Which means that the most powerful apprentice that the Emperor can have is no longer on his side. Like all the manipulation he had been doing would have been for nothing at that point. So do you think, what are your thoughts with like in that realm of it? Like, do you think it obviously it didn't happen? I think we're theorizing a little bit too far down the rabbit trail here.
Well, okay,
but,
let's say if you get to that point,
not trademarked.
You got to that.
It's I don't know what I'm trying to think of saying. But anyways,
let's say if you get to that point, like I said, I feel like Anakin would not have been a Jedi anymore. Like even to the point like where Ahsoka's not a Jedi. Like, I don't. Well, no, I feel like he wouldn't be a. I feel like he would be more of a, not necessarily a Sith, but more of a more to the dark side. If you kept training, but
which
I
would
feel like
probably make him more powerful.
Yeah, but I feel like if you got to that point, I feel like Maul would eventually catch up with him and try to convince him to help overthrow the Emperor.
Ooh, this would be good.
We're there.
Maul and Anakin teaming up.
We're speculating way too much, but yes.
Yeah, I know.
That would be. We talked about Star Wars doing a. We talked about Star Wars doing a what if. That would be cool.
That'd be cool. Yes, Star Wars, do a what if. Anyways, I guess we should probably get back to the duel here because we are speculating and we should talk about what did happen and not what could happen. So
yeah.
Now, one thing that I honestly had never really noticed, but wasn't really like, I never was really paying attention that much. I found it cool that like when they're fighting and they go to the control room, like they destroy the controls that shield everything from the lava, which like is a problem later on as they're fighting outside. They're fighting and the lava's spewing all over the place and they're not shielded from it, which is a very small little detail, but I kind of liked it. Like I honestly had never really noticed it before, and when I saw that, I was like, I like the attention to detail in this. Like, not only is the overarching plot of the movie just so meticulous and like well thought out, like even down to this little tiny detail here, like they just thought of everything with this movie. I honestly like analyzing this more than just being a normal viewer of it. Really made me appreciate this movie a lot more.
Yeah, the attention to detail is. Well, that's one thing I will give. Like, I know there's a lot of things negative things you can say about the prequels and George Lucas's directing, but that part of it, like we talked about this through all of this, like Palpatine's manipulation, all this like tiny details that
the story of it.
Yeah, it really is a good it really is a genius story, and like I will give that's why the original trilogy was so perfect, is because George Lucas was the one who came up with all his ideas. He was in charge of the plot and the story, but someone else wrote the dialogue and directed it.
If you make Episode 2 a good movie, the prequels are 10 times better.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Episode 2 definitely is what brings the prequels down.
Because of how low that is, and also because of how the reception of Jar Jar. But like, even cutting out, like even if you kept Jar Jar in, but Episode 2 was a good movie, like not even just a good Star Wars movie, like a good movie, it would have tremendously brought up the reception of the prequels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alright. Now, the end. Because we've gone through all over the place, but we have to talk about the end part of the duel, the most important part, which is really where most of my thoughts come in. Well, not my thoughts, but the stuff that I had done some research on. So, and what's funny too is literally I got home from work and I saw a video, and it was like I was, maybe about 20 minutes before I got on, for us to start doing this recording, and I saw a video, and it was talking about the duel for episode 3. And it was talking specifically about the point where Obi-Wan jumps, and he has the high ground, and Anakin's sitting there on the floating hover pad or whatever it is. So I think it's pretty well known that Anakin essentially tries to do the same thing that Obi-Wan did to Darth Maul. With that, the move that he did was the same move that Obi-Wan used on Maul. Now, apparently Anakin was extremely obsessed with the fight that Obi-Wan had with Maul, and he wanted every single detail about it. He would constantly ask Obi-Wan about it. He would, find out all the little nitty-gritty details. So, obviously, he would know what, he was doing. I think there's even a comic where Anakin makes one of the training droids, has it, dressed up as Maul. It has a hologram or whatever, and it's dressed up like Maul. Because he was so obsessed with that fight. So, needless to say, he's probably practiced that move countless times. Now, and I think, and I don't know if this was in the original novelization, but I know that this is something that was, later on canonized. But, Obi-Wan says, don't try it. Because he knows exactly what Anakin's thinking about doing. Most of the time you think, and this may not be what it was intended on, but in my mind, Obi-Wan knew exactly what Anakin was thinking about doing. It wasn't just, don't try because you think you're more powerful than me, try and do anything stupid here. No, it was, hey, I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking about doing, and I know exactly how to combat it. Don't try it. But Anakin's over there, he's like, I'm more powerful than you. I'm the chosen one.
You underestimate my power.
Exactly. And so he's like, I'm better than Obi-Wan. I can do what Obi-Wan did to Darth Maul. So he does it, and I talked about this a bunch previously. I finally found out the name of the move that is used. If I can hold up. Let me find the right page. So many pages. Alright. It is called, I can't pronounce that, MOU space KEI. Muiki? Something like that? I don't know. But it, I don't know, because they said, if I can find it, they say it translates to, quote, to dismember. I don't know what it language is supposed to be in, but it translates to dismember, where it's basically where through a form of let's see, a series of circular motions with the lightsaber, you would dismember your opponent, cut a couple limbs off, which is what Obi-Wan does. Now, I heard one thing where it said that Obi-Wan didn't necessarily do this on purpose. He did it as a form of defense, where he, kind of raised his lightsaber up to block Anakin, and then as he was doing it, he just, performed the move. But I've heard that, that was kind of the original thought with it all, but the more canonized version is that Obi-Wan knew he had to end this. That's why he jumped to the high ground. He had to end this. And he knew that if this kept going on, he wouldn't be able to beat Anakin. While Anakin and Obi-Wan were very much evenly matched, Anakin's endurance was much... He would have lasted a lot longer than Obi-Wan, because obviously Obi-Wan's older. and Anakin just has a higher level of endurance at this point in time, more energy. So that also he's fighting with a bunch of rage. So he had to end it, and so he performed this move, which dismembered Anakin the rest of the way to what we know him as Darth Vader, with all 4 limbs being robotic. And he tumbles down the hill, and then we get the waterworks coming, because that is such an emotional scene. I'm not saying I cried in it, but I'm saying I could have cried. Because it really is emotional.
And again, like that's one thing that I do kind of like. They could have done it better, but I do kind of like the symbolism, like the between that duel in the Kenobi show and this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, in Kenobi, like Obi-Wan thinks he's dead.
He has a problem
Obi-Wan.
with that.
Hmm?
Oh, wait, never mind. I realize what you're saying. I thought at first you were saying that he thinks he's dead. Well, Obi-Wan does have a problem with leaving Anakin to die. But I understand. I thought you were saying he thinks he's dead in the Kenobi show when he, leaves. But now I realized. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, Obi-Wan thinks that he killed Anakin. And like that,
and it is one of those things, like earlier talking about with the PTSD and all, like he has to live with the thought, like at that point in time, he has to live with the thought that he killed Anakin Skywalker.
Mm.
Now he finds out that Vader is later alive, but I don't really know how much comfort that really gives him, because
especially
which is what he had to see.
Well, and then that one, like I said, I do have. Well, we need to talk about the Kenobi show at some point on the podcast.
I need to rewatch it. I need to rewatch it to have fresh eyes on it.
Because I do have problems with that show. But one thing that I like about it is that once
it's because he left Tatooine.
But one thing I like about the show is like that one quote in the duel where Vader's like, once he's got the mask broken or whatever, Vader says like, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did."
Mm-hmm.
And that I think part of that is just the thing of like making Obi-Wan not have lied in A New Hope, but
yeah, I mean that is an interesting take on it. I never really thought about it. It's been a while since I've seen the Kenobi show, so obviously if we do talk about it, I'm gonna need to refresh a little bit on it. But there are problems with the Kenobi show, but I also feel like if you take into account the fact, well, we probably should just discuss it at a different time later down the road. Mm-hmm. I will say for sure, I love seeing. Ewan McGregor is an amazing actor. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I love seeing him reprise the role as Obi-Wan Kenobi. If nothing else, Kenobi was worth it for that. Mm. But and then even Hayden Christensen coming back as Vader, I guess at this point, was really cool. But yeah. So I guess hopping back over to the Revenge of the Sith, he does leave Anakin there to die, and a lot of people are like, well, why do you leave him there to die? But it's like, one, he probably couldn't bring himself to kill Anakin, like straight up just kill him. And two, I don't know if this is in the novelization or if this is just fan speculation, but like he knew the Emperor was coming, and if the Emperor's there and he hasn't left, well, he's screwed. he's not going to be able to fight the Emperor. There's a reason
Mm.
Yoda went to fight the Emperor. So he's got to get Padme off world and get out of there. So he doesn't really have time to go down the hill and kill Anakin and then go back up the hill. So, and I bet he, like the PTSD factor of it, like he watched his friend essentially die. Like you don't really think too much of someone after they've just been burned alive. Like he, for all intents and purposes, left probably his best friend to die, and that would take a toll on you, And he has to live in solitude, like
Yeah.
his mental health's not doing too great. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Going on at the same time as all this was also the Yoda Emperor duel.
I know. I realized that we hadn't talked about that.
And that's one thing, like, you kind of, like, see how powerful the Emperor actually is at this point, because, like, you don't really ever, well, even then, you don't really even get to see him using his full power. But, like...
Yeah. But he goes toe-to-toe with Yoda.
Well, I almost get the impression that with this, like, he was toe-to-toe with Yoda without even really trying.
Yeah. But, I mean, at the end of it, like, yes, Yoda seemingly loses, but at the same time, like, the Emperor doesn't really win,
Mm-hmm.
Like, watching the fight. So, like, it is one of those things where maybe he wasn't trying, but he almost wasn't trying and then died in the process. Like, he could have very easily lost that had, something gone just slightly different,
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said, he didn't really even win because he didn't kill Yoda.
Yeah. Well, also, like, what was it? They were, wasn't it where he was using Force Lightning and Yoda was catching it and then, like, they just blew back and Yoda tumbles down to the Senate floor and Palpatine falls back and then Yoda just, runs off at that point. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say that's winning. I'd say that's, like, kind of a stalemate and Yoda's like, I can't keep doing this. It might be, like, on Yoda's part that, he was knowing that he wasn't able to beat the Emperor, but at the same time, like, they didn't fight to the death or fight to, a winner. So I think they did that because Yoda had to live and because all the Yoda fans and all the Palpatine fans can just fight over who's more powerful. Controversy.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming up on the end here of the movie. Which, honestly, I think they did a good job of, like, putting all the pieces in place for it to go into A New Hope.
Yeah. I think they did good.
Because you get
like we talked about having the Death Star. You have Captain Antilles. You
have
they're on the ship. That's very similar.
You have Bail Organa adopting Leia, and you have Obi-Wan taking Luke to Owen Lars and Beru Lars, and like hiding out on Tatooine. You have Yoda going to Dagobah. So it does. Which, I mean, it's a prequel, so of course they are able to do that really well.
You have to set it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I think you mentioned this earlier. Like, for the most part, like, Revenge of the Sith and The Phantom Menace, I think, are really good movies. Attack of the Clones is what brings this the trilogy kind of down. But I really don't have any more to say about Revenge of the Sith, unless you can think of something else to talk about.
No, I think I'm mostly good on it. Um, I will say, like, I forgot how good the movie was.
Mm-hmm.
It is a really good movie, and if you pay attention, there are little Easter eggs, little details here and there. Um, I will say one thing that we didn't talk about in this that I'm not saying we need to talk about now, but is Darth Plagueis, and with him being canonized, whether the Plagueis novel is canonized or not, I would love to see a Plagueis novel of some kind, or a Plagueis show, movie, or something of some kind. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Plagueis needs to come to live action.
Yeah.
And maybe even just, like, leading up to episode 1. Like, just all the stuff that Plagueis did to help Palpatine set up everything,
One thing
like,
I do like.
Palpatine didn't just... Palpatine didn't just out of nowhere come up with this plan. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was the Sith plan for centuries. So it's like, well, let's see a little bit more about where this plan came from. And Plagueis is such a cool character too. It'd be cool to see
Yeah.
him.
Well, one thing I do like, I know we don't really have a whole lot of time to talk about this, but one thing I do like is the fact that, like, when Palpatine's talking about Plagueis, he is so smug when he's talking about Plagueis.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like,
Yeah.
he doesn't tell Anakin this, but, he's basically, telling Anakin about his victory. He's like, he doesn't take credit for it, but he's when he tells the story, he's like, he basically makes the apprentice out to be like the hero, or I don't know necessarily the hero, but
Yeah.
the smart one.
Yeah.
Which
And but yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know. Ian McDiarmid does an amazing job as Palpatine in the prequels. Like,
oh yes, he does.
the like, just some of the background stuff, the facial expressions. Like, I was talking with Sarah about, like, when Mace Windu has him cornered, like, the acting that he does while acting as Palpatine. Like, Palpatine is acting in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is so, like, he's acting like he's too weak, and he's, he's not a threat. He's just, this, that. And then, right at the moment, he's like, oh, no, I'm still extremely powerful. You don't want to mess with me, kind of a deal. Like, if things went sideways there, I'm pretty sure that Palpatine could have just pretty easily handled Mace Windu and Anakin pretty easily. I think he probably could have. If things went sideways, he wasn't gonna let his plan fail. But just he does an amazing job portraying, especially in that scene there, where it's like you're saying, the smugness that he has, and kind of like the disdain that he has for Plagueis. He's like, well, you taught me what I needed to know, but I don't really care for you. I'm more powerful now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So,
Well,
are we ready to head on to a new segment if we're done talking about Revenge of the Sith?
yeah, we can do that. What's new? What's new? What's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? Yeah.
David, what's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? David, what's new? What's new with you? David? Yeah. David, what's new with you?
What's new with me?
Yeah, I want to know what's new with you. Is anything new with you? Do you have a life?
Well, I just got back from Indiana yesterday.
Oh, cool. You're back now? I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know when y'all were supposed to be heading back, but...
Yeah.
So, how was the trip?
It was okay.
Fair enough.
Spending a couple hours in the car is not the most fun thing, but
Especially someone of your height.
True, yes. But on the way up there and the way back, I watched the first 2 seasons of Community. I should rewatched. Yeah.
I know it's a long trip, but that just puts it in perspective.
Yeah, I was able to watch the first 2. Well, and actually, we split it up on 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the last day, I just watched like the last 3 episodes of season 2. I didn't even.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was just in the car ride? Just in the car ride?
Just in the car.
Okay.
Just in the car.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, how many episodes is that? Let me see. Let's see. I think there are about 20 episodes in each season, or like there's a little bit more than 20 episodes in each season.
Was season 1 that long? A lot of times first seasons aren't that long.
Oh no, season 1 was like 22 episodes or something.
So you watched about 40 episodes, and they're all probably 25, 30-minute long episodes?
They're 22-minute episodes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, dang. Community is one of those shows that I'm at the point where I kind of want to go back and watch that now because I'm feeling me some Community. It's been a while.
Okay, so 49 episodes. Let's see how many hours this is. So 49 times 22.
Oh no, David. Are we doing math again? You know, I listened back to the last, or I guess yesterday's podcast, or not yesterday's, last week's podcast. I gotta remember when we're having this come out. But last week's podcast, and that segment was nowhere near as chaotic as I wanted it to be.
Uh-huh.
It was chaotic. It wasn't
actually. I just realized I actually did not watch every episode in season 2.
You skipping through?
No. On Netflix, which I downloaded them on Netflix onto my phone. They removed an episode of Community.
Yeah.
Which you probably remember that. They removed Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Sarah still hasn't seen those episodes. I don't think.
Well, it's only one episode they removed, but that is one of my.
You sure? I'm pretty sure they removed both Dungeon and Dragon episodes.
They did. I'll have to go back and watch that.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
But the first one.
Go ahead.
But the first one in season 2 is one of my favorite episodes of Community. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who have not seen the show, in this episode, they one of the characters dresses up like
by playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, yeah. They cure depression. One of the side characters was basically about to commit suicide.
Cure is a loose term.
Was about to commit suicide, and they basically helped him out by playing Dungeons and Dragons with him. It's a very dark episode when you think about it. But no, why that episode's banned on Netflix is because one of the characters dresses up like a dark elf and basically unintentionally does blackface. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the episode's banned on Netflix. And actually, in one of the episodes of The Office,
and on others too.
Yeah, I think it's banned on everything now. I have the DVDs, so I do have that episode. But yeah, it's banned on most streaming platforms because of that.
I might need to get the DVD before it gets banned on DVD.
I honestly would not be surprised if they tried to do that. Yeah, but the whole thing is they're making fun of it. But
yeah, I think later on they mentioned what's the character's name, Ned or something like that, right?
Fat Neil.
Or Fat Neil. Okay. Anyways, later on they make a reference to that, and when me and Sarah were watching through it the first time she had seen it, they made a reference to that, and I was like, huh, I didn't think we had watched that episode yet. And she was like, I don't know what's going on. I said, well, there's an episode with this character in it, but like we haven't watched it yet. And I was like, unless I like slept through something. So I went back and I looked through all the different seasons. I was like, I have no idea where this episode is. I didn't know that they had banned it from I think we were watching on Netflix at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I had no idea. And I think you later on told me about that. But it was like one of those things like, yeah, I don't think she's ever seen that episode. So we might need to borrow the discs or get them ourselves. And watch that episode with her. I don't know if it's later on with the other Dungeons and Dragon episode they make a reference to it or when it is, but
no, it is sometime in season 2 because I do remember seeing that. But yeah, like I said, that's one of my favorite episodes of that because it's got like it's a bottle episode, so it's all in the study room, but because it's because it's Dungeons and Dragons, like it is you imagine this whole thing that's going on. It's like it's a really cool episode. And it's really well done.
For anyone who hasn't seen Community, go check it out. Like it is a crazy show, but you'll love it.
Oh, yeah, I love Community. That's a show that I can literally rewatch over and over and over again and not get tired of it.
And honestly, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago with the Parks and Rec episode, like their ending is really good, and it's not even that sad. Like it's not overly sad. It's just like, okay, this is over now. You know, let's go watch episode 1 again. Like.
Which we actually are talking about Community later on this month, so...
I know, I saw that. I do need to start watching some more. Is that why you were watching first couple seasons?
That's why I started watching it, which hopefully I'll be done with it by then.
Wow.
But yeah.
I think we're like, what, through 2 or 3 weeks out of it? I will definitely not be watching the whole entire series, but I will watch as much as I can and maybe try and watch like a synopsis of it or whatever.
Watch like the good episodes, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good series. I love them, and I'm still looking forward to like Joel McHale does a great job in that as Jeff Winger, and everything I've seen him in, he's always is good. So I'm looking forward to eventually getting around to watching Animal Control. Right, that's the name of the show.
Animal Control
with him in it, because I think he does a good job in at least in Community, definitely. So, something else with him in it is bound to be pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, do you have any,
See, now I'm trying to think.
We've been talking about everything I've been doing. What have you been up to over the past week?
Well, I went to see my sister this weekend, but, nothing, like, we did things, obviously, but, I'm not gonna go and say all the different things that we did this weekend. It was a good weekend. We watched some movies. We, went to Top Golf. We ate a couple times, got some coffee, stuff like that, but not much in the details there. So, I'm trying to think. Have I done anything else? I think that might have been it. Man, my life. I mean, obviously, I had a pretty busy weekend, but like, as far as this segment goes, I don't really have a whole lot to say.
I think we've pretty much already established that we're boring.
Yeah,
I think we've pretty much already established it. Yeah.
We try not to be, but life sometimes just gets in the way.
That is very true.
I think that can be appreciated. I think the fact that life gets in the way of us, for anyone who listens to this, which, I can't say I know this for a fact, but anyone who listens to this, probably knows us, so yeah, yada, yada, yada. But, like, even down the future, like, you know, if we get to the point where we can do this full time and something like that, like, that'd be great. But life will still get in the way. Like, life gets in the way of everything and everyone. So, stuff come up, you gotta take care of them. And adulting sucks. I have been reminded of that recently. I have been reminded that a lot. But, yeah. Anyways, we do tend to be boring. I would say I've been trying to play Fallout 4, but I would be lying if I did say that. If I don't finish the game, I will promise not to tell you, and we will talk about it because I will watch gameplays of it.
It's kind of cheating, but okay.
Yes, but see, David, you don't have to know that.
Just pretend you just told me so.
I didn't tell you I did it, and I haven't confirmed that I will do it. I just said that if I don't, you won't know because I will do that. You're gonna ask me when we talk about Fallout 4 if I finished, and I'm gonna have to tell you no. Although I could just lie, and you. So
for those of y'all listening, so I played through Fallout 4 like 3 or 4 years ago. I absolutely love that game. Out. No, it came out in like 2014 or something.
I don't know.
But no, I absolutely love that game. And I'm trying to get Wesley to play through it for a while now. And I told Wesley that he needs to play through it before September so we can talk about it. And it's on our schedule for September. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, September 18th. So David, I'm holding you to this.
I would be more than willing to sit down and play the game. Do you want to come and go to work for me and then pay some of my bills?
Yeah, I don't think that's how that works.
Dang it. You're probably right. But hey, you never know until you try. We look enough alike that if we squint hard enough, David, we'll look enough alike that we can just rotate.
Uh-huh.
Although we still have the problem of we're not one person, which means that we have to feed for two. Plus Sarah. That's 3.
That's true. So we should probably
you don't get to eat.
Worry about that.
You don't get to eat.
But I like eating.
You're the imposter. You're the impasta. You can eat the pasta.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like you just mute your mic while you burst out and laughing because there's just nothing. And obviously I know I'm funny, so.
No, you're not.
Okay, fair enough. I pretend to be funny.
Well,
am I a good actor?
No.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll scratch that off the career list. I will do my best to finish Fallout 4, but it's a long game.
Actually,
also, I'm
not
stuck
really.
Right now. Well, it is when you have no time. We've discussed this before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also stuck at this point, and I'm very frustrated with it. So, and I've been stuck. Okay, I haven't played it in at least a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. But I was on that. There's a point where, what am I doing? The dog is taking me to somebody. The scent. They're on someone's scent. Anyways, that's beside the point. Because I get attacked by a bear. And that thing is so hard to kill.
It's actually called a Yao Guai.
That sounds familiar. And then when you start fighting the bear, not only do you have to fight that, some other animals come up, and then I think some of the what are they called? The superhumans or whatever. They find you and they start fighting you. So you're fighting 3 or 4 different things, and they're all hard to kill. So I keep dying. and there's not really a way to get around it because the dog wants to go right through that area. So I'm still frustrated about it, even though it's been like at least a week and a half or 2 weeks since I've played it. So I'm still kind of calming down from that to get to the point where I can run over there and deal with that.
Oh, you're coming up on a really good dungeon.
No, don't tell me that.
You're tracking down Kellogg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but see, that probably means it's really hard. So I need whatever the easy mode is, and then I need that set to easy mode. Like one shot kill everything. Actually, I shouldn't even have to shoot anything. I should just aim at it and it should die. That would be the easy mode.
I don't think that's how that works.
I want to make a game. I want to make a game, David. And when you aim at something on easy mode, it just dies. Bad game idea. There we go, David.
There reminds me of
millions. We'll make millions of copies that no one will ever buy.
But that reminds me of a YouTube short I saw. Who was the guy who did that?
I don't know. I didn't watch it.
Oh yeah. Johnny Razor. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He does I think he started on TikTok, but he does YouTube Shorts too. But he one of his like series is like bad game ideas, and one of the things he proposed. Yeah, one of the things he talked about is a like sword or some gun or something in some game that one shot kills everything. But what is it's not actually killing them; it's just teleporting them to the final boss room.
Yeah.
I love that idea for a game, for a like weapon in a game so much, because like if you like, make it hard to find, so if you find it, like, you know, this is amazing, but then, you know.
So with that in mind, does that mean that you would be unable to use it on the final boss? Or would it be just respawning them? Because if you did that and you dealt damage to them, they'd respawn, but they'd have full health.
What if you did it where if you use it in the final boss fight, it doesn't teleport them? Mm-hmm. It just spawns another one.
Oof.
Okay, this thing we just made up is going to melt someone's PC.
Yes, that's true. It's gonna be over there, and then there's gonna be like some video or whatever, and there's just like a million, like the screen just crashes. It's like can't handle how many characters are in there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that.
That'd be funny. That would be a lot. Well, the gaming systems are not ready for this.
I want to see someone design a game with this kind of mechanic in it, though. That would be so funny.
That would be cool. Honestly, that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about all we got.
I can mumble into the mic for about another 49 hours.
Yeah, no one wants to listen to that. Well, let's go ahead and head on to an outro. And make sure to join us next week, because we're talking about Indiana Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny.
Yes.
It's going to be a hot mess.
I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful it's good.
Yeah, I've lost all hope at this point. Anyway, on to an outro.
Fair enough.
Well, explorers, that's all the time we have for today.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, or you can DM us on Instagram at DownTheRabbitTrailYT.
And be sure to join us next week on The Trailcast.